introduction, a lengthy one. Okay, so let me just jump on my presentation. Can I share this one? So I'll just make this full screen. Okay, so I'm going to talk about land and water developments and issue. So basically the summary, sort of an outline of my talk, is to look at some land and water developments in the country, and then perhaps take a look at how we could possibly improve it from other countries, and then look at some issues on land, water, interactions or integration and so on. So I'll begin with the coastal highways and mangroves, then get into discussions on land reclamations, land boundaries and water permitting. And then I always want to inject this Candaba swamp, which is related to land reclamations. And then some sort of attitude or practices in the Philippines, which sometimes becomes an issue, like why do we build houses along rivers, or maybe even developments in the Marikina River meandering. And then the last slide I have is kind of interesting. The issue on land areas as far as the national tax allotment is concerned. Before, I think you call it an IRA, Internal Revenue Allotment, but now they call it NTA, National Tax Allotment. So let me begin by looking at some coastal highways. One particular highway that I'm quite familiar because I come from Mindanao is in Cagayan de Oro City. So if you notice that in 2004, this area, which is declared as a Gusa Fish Sanctuary, and then you have a Gusa Mangrove Reserve, has been, obliterated, especially the mangroves, by building this highway, coastal highway, which is a road dike. Essentially, you cut off the mangrove from the sea by building a road dike. You dike it and then put a road on top. So that's in 2012. So apparently it was slowed down when you had the pandemic, but now it's completely finished. But look how the developments start, expanding or occupying the mangrove. So that's an issue that, it seems like there are always these stories about some big developers. They will start buying off lands around here, and then 10 years down the road, they know what's going to happen. It will be a coastal road, then they start occupying, reclaiming the land, so to speak. The next example I want to show, and this has been controversial just lately in the past 5 years, this coastal highway on Sorsogon Bay. And in fact, again, I have friends telling me that way back 10 years ago, they were already speculating, a lot of these landowners, that, I'll buy land here and so on, because I think they know that there will be a coastal highway, or they already designed to build a coastal highway. Again, it is a road dike. That's what you see. I think I've shown you this road dike. Similarly, in Sorsogon, you have this in Sorsogon Bay. So this is quite fast. I got this in the Google map, July 2011, but starting May 2020, they started building this coastal highway. And then 2 years after, and during the pandemic, all of a sudden, the highway or the coastal highway is almost complete. But again, separating the mangroves, this area, and even this part, from the sea. So again, you have obliterated, or you have essentially removed those mangroves, which can provide, biodiversity, flood protection, and all those benefits of having a mangrove in the area. Another one is in Tacloban. I guess the idea is that how come they always build these road dikes? This in this area here in 2013, right after Typhoon Haiyan, that's what you see in Google Map. It's kind of a brownish. The whole thing was, of course, flooded by this big storm surge, tsunami waves. And then December 2014, you have it. But now, 2024 May, you have this nice coastal highway, this one. And this road in particular is going this way. Maybe it's not yet complete, but that's across the Madison Park. And this is the MacArthur Landing somewhere here. So again, you build a coastal road, obliterated maybe a good part of the mangrove, if you look at, or the wetlands, the coastal wetlands for that matter. So the idea, why can't we build the road, elevated highway instead of road dikes, something like this? And in fact, we have one famous or iconic example, the Patapat Viaduct built in the 70s. See, they kind of, but maybe these in a coastal highway, but you have the mountain right away. But, you know, it can be built something like this, or a combination of the elevated highway and a road dike, not necessarily all this road dike, but in other words, retain some of the mangroves. I guess we have like academician Georgine Primavera. She was always telling that we have to have so many % of our coastlines with mangroves. So this is one example, but this is in Laguna Lake, not quite in a coastal area. But in 2000, we have this project which we came in as a third party because the government wanted to build a road dike. This in the west part of Mangahan floodway in the northern part of Laguna Lake. So, but a lot of the stakeholders, fisher folks, farmers, businesses opposed the project. So we came in because they have only one configuration. We came in to look at what would be alternative lakeshore road configuration. But we went through this process of like in transdisciplinary approach where you identify the problem, you generate knowledge, generate solution, you run your models to assess what's happening, and then you go back, see what's happening. So we ended up with several configuration, alternative configuration, but in the end, we zeroed in on 6 configurations. So this one, for example, considers the full protection of human settlements, lupang arenda for that matter. This one is partially protecting them, but retain the fish pawning. On the other hand, perhaps retain the fish pawning by putting a elevated highway instead of a road dike. So those are things that you can run through with the stakeholders. And this one in particular, you can have a combination of a road dike as well as a elevated highway. So that's the idea, developing a compromise among the fisher folks and then the businesses and then the local residents. Now, let me get into land reclamation in Manila Bay. So we always had this approach where when we reclaim lands, we extend from the mainland to the sea. So you can see that this is the SMOA, this is part of CCP. If you go back to the old, some of the old pictures here, this Rojas Boulevard, essentially they connected this reclamation to the mainland, which is along along Rojas Boulevard. So I guess if you look at the Manila Bay reclamation, quite quick, January 2022, you have February 2024, look how big the area that's already claimed. So the question then is, if you wanted to retain some of the flood in drainage function of this area, maybe we should build by putting in waterways here and there, and we shouldn't connect. And I'm going to show you in a minute how that happens. Now, the Bulacan International Airport, it's doing almost the same thing. This is the Taliptip area in Bulacan. In 4 years, 5 years, you already have this development. Now it's this one. So everything is connected again to the land. And there are waterways here, actually. If you can blow this up or zoom in here, these are waterways, but now they're gone. So I don't know if they have underground drainage or what, but definitely maintenance may be an issue if those are subsurface. But look at this, for example, in the case of Incheon Airport in Seoul, this airport is disconnected, is an island, not connected to the mainland. So again, when you talk about land reclamations, maybe we should look at examples like this. We retain the major waterways or create sort of reclaim islands, which will retain the flood drainage in the area, like this one in Fashion Island, Newport Beach. You have even Rotterdam. If you can zoom in here, you can see all these channels being retained, and the reclamations, which you call it in Netherlands, polder dikes. Actually, you have poldering where you retain the essential waterways, and then they just put bridges to go to the islands. Even in Florida, West Palm Beach, this where this Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago mansion, it's actually in this island, you know. So it's separate from the mainland to retain the drainage, because that's always an issue in the case of Roas Boulevard. They always say that, oh, the reclamation will definitely enhance flooding in that area. So that's one. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up is this Candaba swamp, because they've always been talking about this Pampanga River going down here and then gets to this swamp area. And then they were always thinking about putting a ring dike here, about 156 square kilometers area, but maybe it is a smaller area that they will essentially serve as a detention pond, but it will function like a reservoir, the entire thing. But if you do that, perhaps you will compromise the ecological value of the area as a wetland sanctuary or whatever you call it. Because if you look at the area, different parts of the year, or not parts of the year, but different seasons of the year or types of water year, you have these areas, low-lying areas where they get flooded and on and on. So you can see more or less if it's a dry, maybe a little bit wet, that you can see it clearly, but you can see that there are pockets of these depressed areas. So if you wanted to maintain or retain the ecological function of a wetland, you have to maintain what we call the flood inundation frequency in time and space, so that so many months a year, this percent of time, you have so much percent of the area being flooded. So you can imagine that in the months of August, September, you want this area to be 100% flooded. But of course, this may be too flooded if you look at historical data. But the idea is that as a functional, ecologically functional wetland, you have to maintain this. If you modify that, then maybe those fish, the wildlife or the flora, fauna which has survived in that area for hundreds of years, will no longer will be displaced, so to speak. So that's the idea. So the idea is that perhaps we can still assign or relegate the flood function to Candaba Swamp, but retain the ecological function, the connectivity for flora, fauna, refuge, and survival by creating a network of lakes. And you can see that there's one good example in the Kissimmee Basin in Florida, where the wetland, so that it can perform some flood function so that Orlando up here will not be flooded. You have this network of lakes here. So if this area gets flooded, that area, they are connected by open channels. So they will be balancing as far as trying to contain or to be able to contain the flood waters by moving water in the other lake and so on, because they're connected to each other. If it's a flatland, you don't put channels, so much area will be flooded, and then it's not going to balance up in the other parts of the area. So that could be an idea. Now, I'd like to get into this one issue as far as land boundaries is concerned. And Dr. Doy Romero had an article on this in the Phil Inquirer about the controversy in these towns of Balilihan in Bohol and Sevilla town because of this water permit. So in 2019, April, if you see this slide, Balilihan got a water permit, 227 liters per second, so about 0.2 to 0.23 cubic meters per second, so a little bit less than divided by 1,000, so less than 1 cubic meter per second. So this was cited, I put it that in the water permit with this coordinates. Now, if you look at this bulwark spring somewhere here is in this river, and the picture is something like this. It's actually giving you as much as 1,500 liters per second. So you can imagine 227 against 1.5, so you have plenty of water. But then somehow some political as well as some commercial maybe or economic reasons, they said, wait a minute, you got your water permit, but that bulwark spring belongs to this other municipality. And I did a survey in December 2021, and they said that the bulwark spring is located on this side. Now, if you look at this figure here, as a practice, usually the municipal boundaries are along the rivers. So this is what happened. You have a river, the center line then separates one municipality to the other municipality. In fact, if you look at Metro Manila, Quezon City is separated from Marikina through the Marikina River, or Pasig to Quezon City through that lower Marikina, and then Mandaluyong to Makati along Pasig River, things like that. So that's what happened. So if you look at the location, the water permit is located on this, what we call Balilihan side, and then the survey, they said it's supposedly belongs to Sevilla. And for water permitting, if you apply a water permit in that municipality, you have to publish, and then there will be a hearing if there are any protests or whatever. So what happens is that they didn't publish it in Sevilla during the time. They only published in Balilihan because they were thinking it belongs to Balilihan. Now, that was 2019. If you look at the Google map in 2019, which is what was used when they made this argument. In fact, this was drawn by NWRB, it looks like the river has a little bit move here and there. See, if you look at so maybe the spring was on the other side as opposed to that. But the 2017 figure in Google Map, it's clear that ignore this Bulwark Spring because this was like taken by some tourist who took a picture and then put a tag there. But these are the actual. So, of course, the location, the water permit of Balilihan, which is here, as opposed to the survey, it essentially says that, okay, it belongs to Sevilla. But the problem is that in 2003, I think, 2002, there was already a 94 million peso worth of water works. That's the picture here. That was removed by the town of Sevilla. So, of course, that's because of that dispute. So, but if you look at the distance between the 2 points, it's 34 meters away from each other. So I don't know if that makes a little bit of a issue, because if you look at the water permit in National Water Resources Board, they put it in terms of longitude and latitude. Now, if you make a mistake 1 second, that's about 30 meters. The 1 second difference is like, for example, this one, 32.72 against 31.75. But, how could you be that accurate, 30 meters, So again, that's an issue as far as, but the problem is that if I think about it, if they really talk it out, maybe 227 liters per second, if you're drawing 1,500, it's not that much, Secondly, of course, Balilihan could have thought of extracting the water on their side. It's the river side of the Balilihan. Anyway, the water from the spring, I think could, it's still, this is a spring. It's still clean as far as coming from the spring into the river, even if you extract on the other side. But that's the engineering measure. But of course, there is more than that, the political and then the commercial angle, actually. Talking about water permit problems as far as location, these are things like in the case of the Wawa Dam. First of all, the original Wawa Dam water permit is somewhere here, which is the original Wawa Dam location. But when they built the upper Wawa, they petitioned if they can move a little bit upstream the location of the water permit, which was granted by the NWRB. So that's where you can see now the upper Wawa Dam of Metro Manila. So that is a water permit. But then they put up another dam up here before it goes down, what we call the Weir number 2, which is in Calawis. And this lower dam here will divert water to this side, maybe Antipolo. But then when they look at the water permit, NWRB, I don't know, 20 years ago or so, gave the water permit with coordinate in Tayabasan River, but actually this Montalban River, which is on that side. So it's not quite on this side, which is the actual Tayabasan River. Although that was corrected later on because anyway, there's enough water on this side, even though the Calawis Dam is on this side. So that's no problem. But that's, again, it's so important if you look at the water permit location that you are exact and you have the proper river rather than, just because that's the case of Balilihan. Of course, here there was no controversy among municipalities, but that's an issue. And this some kind of an issue I just want to kind of bring in as a point of discussion. Why do we always build houses along rivers. And the rivers are where you can have the riverine flooding or a river flooding prone to river flooding. And you can look at April 2002, it's a little bit difficult to see, but if you look at this carefully, the housing has slowly uh, sprawled all over this, along the river. This is a Pampanga River, and this Angat River. And instead of this Angat River going down to this Labangan Creek down here, that's in fact, they wanted to put up a floodway here, the Labangan floodway, but until now it's not built because there was some opposition. They said so. In any case, the Angat River, instead of going down here to Pampanga Bay or Manila Bay, it makes a little bit of a right turn here and then joins Pampanga River. And yet, there are people along the rivers. So I call it sort of a river felicity, the affinity to live around the rivers. But of course, you get flooded. So one of the reasons they said is because, along the river, you build this road, these dikes, these river dikes. So then they will build around those dikes. So that's kind of instead of maybe put up the housing here, but then so there are already like dikes here, which are road dikes also. Then they will build along those dikes. But it full well that this area in Macabebe, Masantol, they get flooded. Now, perennially flooded. So this like already, in fact, in my other talks, I always say that perhaps here we already create some kind of a waterway, which is like, a water world where transportation will be bunker and then houses will be on stilts and so on. This is another curious case of development in Marikina, just on the other side, on the northeast, southeast of UP, where if you look at March 2007, that was before Typhoon Ondoy, this Marikina River was going this way, very distinct river, alignment here. And then after Ondoy, 2009, September, so that's 15 years ago. Yeah, 15 years ago, the river, Marikina River, went cascaded and went and, just look at the easiest distance from that point because you have plenty of water, it just went through this one. And then I think there was not quite Ondoy anymore in the last 10 years relative to 2019. So look at the developments. That area that got flooded, in fact, this is an area where I always suggested after 2009, maybe make that a detention pond. As a detention pond for the Marikina River. But look what happened. They started developing and putting housing in that area. So the detention pond is gone, but definitely we'll have another Ondoy one of these days. That river could even go straight. The river could find its way here. If you think about the meandering river, as a rule, if the width of the river is that much, maybe Marikina is 120, the river could meander, migrate on one side and on the other side a total of 6 times the width of the river. So if it's 100 meters here, it could migrate 300 meters on this side or 300 meters on the other side. That's the kind of, the river, how rivers behave. So this, again, as I mentioned, is a curious case of a development here. Since maybe they forgot about Ondoy, and maybe they put some flood wall here, and then that's always an issue with resilience. If you put a flood wall, people become complacent. Or if you put a guardrail, they become complacent, they go faster along those river bends or along the highway curbs, and then they go fast, so then they become less resilient, actually, for that matter. And finally, this is kind of an interesting, this was my last slide. In around 2007, there was, we have Professor Ping Lopez, I think if Epifanio Lopez of Geodetic Engineering. He made a presentation that during the time, the internal revenue allotment in a lot of cities, when that was granted, they said that if we make our city bigger artificially, we'll get higher allotment. So that's what happened. That was his presentation then in 2007. So that was quite an interesting that he showed that how would they expand such that you add all this area, let's say instead of the one province, maybe 300 square kilometers, now it's 450 square kilometers. And that was then. And then I found out this, a good friend of mine from DLRG, Alvidon Asis. He gave me this a discussion paper, it's a draft, where they now wanted, through the Land Management Bureau, decrease the land areas because they have bloated. Like if you look at this table, 94% of Antipolo City has been bloated that much. So they want to decrease it. So practically, if that's 100 square kilometers, now it should only be about 5-6 square kilometers because that's what they are doing. And you can see these, the top 10, Calaca City, Santiago City. And there are implications as far as the losses, as far as the NTA, the National Tax Allotment share is concerned, the city. Like number one in the Philippines, the biggest loser will be Santiago City, Calaca City, Iligan, and so on. Actually, if you look at by regions, I have seen the table by regions. Number one, as far as bloating, the areas is in one is in Zamboanga Peninsula. You have in Calabarzon, it's just you have Calabarzon, Northern Mindanao, Cagayan Province, and those are the top four, if I remember correctly. Of course, there are also gainers. Some have been reduced, but this is the case where you have some gain, like Tabuk City or Cadiz City, Bayaw City, because there are cities that they have bloated their area at the expense of the neighboring city. So these are, again, the top 10 gainers as far as, and they even put up the amounts. You look at the case of Santiago City, they will lose 1 billion. Here, they will gain 1 million, 135 million. But this is quite significant, if you think about it. But Antipolo here is number 10. They will just lose 363. But for some reason, they're not in the number 1 or 2, but they are the number 1 as far as decreasing their land area is concerned. Because in other words, that presentation of Professor Ping Lopez in 2007 was showing how much they have bloated. Now, DILG wanted to make sure, because now with in fact, I was talking to Mr. Asis Alvidon, he said that with new technology, with LiDAR maps and things like that, then they're able to properly determine what is the land area of a given city. So that ends my talk. Thank you so much.
Ay nako Sir Glenn, maraming salamat din po sa inyong napakagandang topic. At totoo pong napapanahon, I would say, kasi just recently meron po tayong bagyo na sinisisi natin sa mga flood control na hindi effective. Just recently, sir, meron tayong bagyo sa Davao na sinisisi naman sa pondo na hindi nagamit ng tama. Pero alam po natin sir, maganda pong alamin ano po bang talagang dahilan ng mga nangyayaring ito. But anyways, Sir Glenn, maraming salamat po sa pagpaunlak po
Yeah,
sa amin sa hapon na ito at sa isang napakagandang talk. At maraming salamat po sa
thank
ating
you.
mga panauhin panelists sa pagsama po sa amin ngayong hapon. Muli po ako po si Mark Flores, ang inyong host for today. Muli niyo po kami samahan next week sa isa naman po napakagandang topic, same place, same time, same channel. And you all have a great weekend. Bye for
Thank you.
now.
See you. Bye-bye. Because Lulu, eh,